All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. You know, I think this week we're going to get into something that we all struggle with a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's how expectations and mindset really impact our performance,
Mhm.
especially when, we feel like we're up against a really tough competitor.
Especially when you're facing someone who just seems unbeatable.
Yeah, when you're going up against somebody and
Yeah,
you're like, oh, man,
totally.
I've got to play this person. This is going to be tough.
You've got that history with them of
Exactly.
like, oh, I always lose to this person,
Oh,
or
you
they're
just,
just so much better.
and you just get psyched out.
Totally.
You just get in your own head a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've got some interesting sources this week. Um, and there's a lot of research on this as it applies to sports psychology,
Yeah.
but I think the insights can really apply to any field.
Oh, absolutely.
We all face these kinds of things.
Like
And
I think about it even going into like a presentation
Totally.
at work or,
Like a big
a
presentation
big meeting.
or like a tough negotiation, where you feel like
Yeah.
the odds are stacked against you.
Like I'm going to lose this negotiation.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the research this week was they actually used an example from tennis.
Okay.
And that this was Grigor Dimitrov beating Carlos Alcaraz in Miami last year.
Wow.
Now, for context here, Alcaraz at the time was like,
Yeah, he was on top of the world.
yeah, he was like a tennis god.
Yeah, ranked number 2.
Yeah.
And Dimitrov, was good,
Right.
but he wasn't considered, one of
Yeah.
the top players.
Yeah.
So it was really an incredible upset.
Wow.
And so I think there's a lot that we can kind of unpack here
For sure.
in terms of mental strategies.
Yeah, what's really interesting is just the fact that our thoughts can
Right.
become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Totally.
The research really digs into how when we're constantly
Dwelling on past losses, that we create a mental block that sets us up for failure.
Yeah, it's like
Before we even get...
we're almost pre-programming ourselves to lose.
Exactly.
And I'm sure we've all kind of experienced this.
Yeah.
Where you make a mistake or you lose and you're like, oh, here we go again.
Oh, man, I've been there.
It's just
Like that fear becomes this
Yeah.
weight,
and it really does. And it's not just that it impacts our preparation, it
Yeah.
impacts our focus,
and impacts our confidence.
our confidence.
Yeah.
Exactly. We start to make these like illogical predictions about the future based on
Well,
things that have happened in the past.
Based on what's happened before.
Yeah. Even if it's not even relevant,
Right. Totally different situation.
Yeah. So it's like, that old saying, like,
Uh,
if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
yeah. And that's where the Alcaraz and Dimitrov match.
Right.
It's really interesting. Because remember, Alcaraz was on this roll. He was aiming for the Sunshine Double.
Yeah. He had just won Indian Wells.
Yeah.
He was really playing some of the best tennis of his life.
Yeah.
And Dimitrov really just kind of like dismantled his game.
He did. He just completely shut him down.
Yeah. And I remember watching this match.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is going on here? Dimitrov won something like 77% of his first serve points.
Wow.
And he broke Alcaraz 4 times.
Really?
It wasn't even close.
So it wasn't even a close match.
It was not a close match.
Yeah.
And what really struck me was what Dimitrov said afterwards.
Yeah.
He said, to win against him, you have to play at your best. Sometimes simplicity is genius.
Mm.
And it was almost like he completely ignored all the hype around Alcaraz, all the past results, all the expectations, and just focused on what he needed to do.
Yeah, just focused on himself and his game.
Yeah. And that really kind of gets into the core of the mindset shift that the research talks about.
Yeah, what they talk about.
And that's moving away from fixating on the outcome,
Right.
winning or losing,
Right.
and instead just focusing on the process
Yeah, focusing on that problem.
of executing
Yeah.
each step to the best of your ability.
On each moment,
Yeah.
playing your best 1 point at a time.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, you've lost to this person before,
Mm.
or maybe everyone's expecting you to fail. But if you can just like quiet all that noise and just really pour your energy into, nailing this presentation slide or, making the perfect sales pitch, whatever it is, the results will follow.
Right.
And that reminds me of the concept of flow state.
Oh, yeah.
Have you experienced flow state?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so explain that to me.
So flow state is that feeling when you're so immersed in what you're doing that everything else just fades away. You know, you're not thinking about what you have to do later. You're not thinking about what you should have done before. You're just in the moment.
Yeah.
Completely in the moment.
And it's like time disappears.
Exactly. Time disappears.
And you're just like laser focused on what you're doing.
Yeah. And one of the keys to achieving that flow state is to focus on the process, to focus on those micro actions rather than the overwhelming pressure of the end goal.
Right. Okay. So I guess it's not about pretending that the pressure doesn't exist. It's about channeling your energy more productively.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. But I think it's fair to say that, you know, sometimes focusing on the process can kind of be an excuse to avoid the reality of the outcome, right?
Totally.
Like if you're obsessing over each tiny little step, or you're really just trying to avoid thinking about the fact that you might fail.
Yeah, it's like, are you just trying to avoid that bigger picture?
Exactly. So how do you reconcile that?
I think it's about intention. You know, if you're using the process as a shield to avoid the possibility of failure, then yes, it can be counterproductive. But if you're using the process as a tool to maximize your performance in each moment to bring your A game, regardless of the outcome, then it becomes this source of power.
Okay, so it's not about like burying your head in the sand. It's about recognizing that you can really only control your actions in the present moment.
Exactly.
And that kind of brings us back to the main takeaway here.
Right.
Which is this idea that when you expect the worst, you invite the worst.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a really powerful point.
Right.
You know, the research suggests that instead of getting caught in that negative spiral, we should focus on meticulous preparation and staying present in each moment and actually reframing those past losses, not as proof of our inevitable future failure, but as valuable learning experiences.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. So let's try to apply this to like our own lives. So let's say you're about to go into like a big meeting. You're facing a really challenging deadline. How can you kind of shift your mindset in that moment?
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
You know, recognizing when those negative expectations are creeping in.
Okay.
So you might be thinking, oh, I always mess up presentations, or I'm never going to finish this project on time.
Right.
But you've got to catch yourself in those moments and gently redirect your focus.
Redirect to what? Like, what should you be thinking about?
Instead of fixating on the fear of messing up the presentation, you can focus on connecting with your audience, on delivering your message clearly and concisely. Instead of panicking about the deadline, you can break down the project into smaller, more manageable tasks and focus on completing one task at a time.
Oh, so it's like, you know, remember Dimitrov's words, simplicity is genius.
Yeah, sometimes simplicity is genius.
I like that. So I guess to wrap things up, it sounds like the key message here is to not let the ghosts of past defeats dictate your future expectations.
Exactly.
You know, instead just focus on your preparation, your effort, and your attitude in each moment.
Yeah.
And remember, sometimes the simplest action can be the most powerful.
Absolutely.
So as we head into the rest of our week, I think that's something to really kind of think about.
Yeah. So as you face your next challenge, big or small, ask yourself, what's one simple but effective action you can take right now to improve your performance, even if the odds seem stacked against you?
That's a really good question. All right, everyone, until next time.